Today we're talking about the importance of the block, and a ping skiller called Rick sent us an email, Alois.
Yeah, so his thought was that he's just discovered the importance of the block. And that's a really important point because the block is probably the most underappreciated stroke in the game.
And he told us that he was thinking of it just as something like an instructor does just to help you train, but it's a lot more than that.
Yeah, and it's something that can start to help you to control the game and to open up opportunities for your bigger strokes as well.
Yeah. So what was Rick's big revelation?
Yeah, so his revelation was that by just focusing on the block, now he can start to develop his whole game.
And in a match situation, like how do we use the block? Should we be just trying to counterattack everything, or how do we use the block?
I think that's a perception that we often get because when we watch the best players in the world, most of them aren't blocking very much because they've just seem to have a little bit more time and they're just putting a bit of counterspin on almost everything.
But they're the best in the world, and although they make that look easy,
yeah,
for us mere mortals, it's probably a bit one step too high most of the time. I mean,
yeah,
we should be practicing trying to be counterattacking, but I think maybe the block should be used more often.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this goes back to how we actually treat that in our training as well. Because a lot of the time in training, when it's our turn to block, we often get really passive and almost just think of it as our rest time.
Okay, but what should we be doing?
Use it. Use that time. Use that blocking time to improve what Rick has now seen as a really important part of the game.
Okay. Back when you and I used to play Alois, there was some like players that people call like the best ever. We're talking Waldner, Samsonov.
Yeah.
Talk to me about their blocking.
Yeah, their blocking was incredible. It looked like they had all the time in the world, but they were often setting up the rest of their game by the way that they were blocking. They'd position the ball well, they'd control the rally with their block, and then perhaps, they might play a stronger stroke when they get a little bit more time, when they outposition their opponent.
So even though at the very top level, the game's moved on a little bit and there's more counter spinning than in our day, I still think that for people, as they're building up their levels, focus on that block, and even like the top players today, they would have incredible blocks.
They are incredible. And if you just watch them in their training sessions, you can just see, they're just standing there and controlling the ball so well with their blocking.
And I don't think you'll be able to develop these amazing counter hits without first developing that block.
Yes, the block is almost the base of being able to then counter.
All right, so now we know how important the block is, Alice. We're going to look at some common errors and how to fix it fast. So I see 3 common mistakes people make with blocking, and the first one is being too passive. Now, this is really a mindset thing, Alois.
It really is. Passive meaning that you're almost not treating the block as a stroke that you can do something with. And that stems from training. So in training, it's important to be thinking about being a little bit more active, and also then in a game situation, thinking that a block isn't just getting the ball back on the table. A block can be used to start to set the rest of the rally up for you.
Or can it be used to win points outright? Like say someone pivots out wide, you can block down the line and just win that point.
Yep, absolutely. If you're placing the ball well, if you're thinking about what you're doing with the block, it can be a really powerful weapon.
And we see that with some particular players that are just blockers and they just win whole matches just by blocking.
And they're frustrating to play, but very effective.
Yeah, excellent. All right, what's the real fix here? Just changing your mindset, thinking do a bit more with your block?
Yeah, absolutely. So it starts with your training. It starts when you're training, and if you've got a training partner and it's their turn to train, and might be doing some movement or some topspin, and your job is to be blocking or controlling the ball, use that time really well. So use that time to improve how well you're seeing the ball, how well you're placing the ball. They might want the ball, in one area. Try to get the ball into that area all the time. Or if they're giving you a bit more license when you're blocking to place the ball, use that time. Start to think about getting the ball closer to the lines rather than just blobbing the ball into the middle of their forehand and backhand.
And then I guess the same in a match. Try and utilize that. Try and sometimes block a bit faster, sometimes block a bit slower, sometimes block a bit wider.
Yes. Yeah. It's the placement and the speed.
Excellent. All right. And now, Alois, the second common mistake I see is people kind of gripping the bat too tightly, and they often just hit the ball off the end of the table.
Yeah.
But there's a real fix for this that's pretty simple.
Yeah. The thing there is that, as soon as you tighten here, then this tightens, this tightens, this tightens, everything tightens, and then you're not actually playing a proper stroke. And it feels like you are. It feels like you've got good control of it and you can really, muscle the block and punch the block. But in reality, you're losing the touch and the feel to be able to soften and to be able to place the ball well and be able to absorb the faster shots and the spinnier shots as well. So it's really important to start to think about your fingers and your hand and your wrist being soft and allowing it to move and be subtle and supple.
Okay, so soft hands. Now, does this mean that if I'm using soft hands that I can't hit the ball hard?
No. In fact, when you've got soft hands and all of this is working well, you can actually hit the ball faster because now everything actually works rather than it hitting just a wall. Now you can start to generate a little bit of the pace yourself.
And it sounds counterintuitive, Alice, but when I notice myself that I'm gripping it a bit tight and suddenly I relax it, I feel like I've got more control. Yes. And then because I've got more control, like you said, everything's working better. It does feel like I can then start to play things harder and not miss as much.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way we generate speed is through the use of the wrist and the arm and the body working in tune with each other. If you're locking all of that up, then you're not allowing the body to work together.
Yeah. And like I said at the start of that, it feels like when you're too tight that the ball just flies off and out, and I often just miss it off the end of the table.
Especially off a really spinny ball or a fast ball, if you just present it with a brick wall, which is really hard, the ball's just going to fly as well. So if you've got a soft sponge, you can start to control what you're doing with that and generate speed when you want to as well.
Yeah. And then the third mistake that I see is people not really being ready for the block. And to me, it seems like maybe they're keeping their bat a bit too low.
Yeah, this is a good one, Jeff. So when you're in a blocking situation, I often see, people want to play a topspin. And so they're starting down here and then the ball's coming and they're doing this and they're doing this. So to get to the hitting point, it's from side on, it's like they're doing that and doing that rather than just keeping the racket up here and then block, block, block. When you have got a little bit more time and see that it's time to attack, then you can drop your hand to make the topspin a little bit more effectively. So the real fix here is focus on keeping your racket up high during that blocking rally.
Great tips. All right. Hopefully they help you out. Now we're going to move on to some viewer questions in our Ask the Coach section. First up, we have a question from Sivachandran, who says, I have a problem with blocking. In practice, I have no problems at all. I can get the ball back on the table. But as soon as it comes to a match, I can't make a single block. I guess I'm doing the wrong angle of the bat, and I guess I'm also late in reaching the right position of the ball. So I'd like to hear from you, Alois. How can I solve this blocking problem?
Sivachandran, there's two things I want you to focus on. One, in your training, I want you to challenge yourself more. So rather than having your partner hit the ball to a set position where you know where the ball's coming, perhaps to your backhand, perhaps to your forehand, perhaps one to each side, I want you now to get them to challenge you by hitting the ball more randomly to you so that now you need to be watching the ball and then still executing your block. That's number one. Number two is make sure now that you're keeping a nice soft hand in a match and when you're being challenged more in that training situation. Just check to see that you aren't tightening up in the match and tightening up when they're starting to hit the ball to you anywhere in the training situation. So work on those two things and I think your block will improve during your matches.
Our next question comes from a Tiff who says, what should you do to increase the reflexes to enhance your blocking on both sides when you don't know where the ball's coming? And what should you do with your racket after each effective block?
A tiff, one of the keys here is to make sure that you're tracking the ball really well. Now, it's often talked about, watching the ball, but I want you to put much, much, much more emphasis on watching, tracking the ball. It's really incredible how by being able to watch the ball, you're picking the ball up just maybe a microsecond earlier, but it feels like you've got so much more time to see where the ball's coming when you're blocking. So now I want you to, one, really focus on watching the ball, but carefully. The second thing I want you to think about is not favouring your forehand or your backhand. Often we have a favourite side and we'll almost go to that side. So rather than going here after your previous block, I want you to just follow the ball with your racket. So wherever the ball is, there it is, there it is, here it is on my forehand. So really just be fluent and follow the ball with your racket. So they're the two main things I want you to really think about to improve your reflexes.
And our third question is from Carlo, who says, I was training my partner and I was the one being the blocker a lot of the time, and I realized I wasn't that good at blocking. So now I'm focusing more on it, and there's all these different types of blocks. There's like a passive block, there's a normal block, a punch block, there's a chop block, and also, the counter topspin, of course. Who doesn't love playing those? And so Carlo really wants to know, when I'm training, which blocks should I be training for and how often should I practice them?
Carlo, when you're practicing a block, I want you to treat it like you would with any other skill that you're practicing, whether you're practicing your topspin or your serve. I want you to think about doing lots of variations, but treating it really seriously as it's a stroke that's going to win you some points. Now, you talk about, should you practice all the variations? Definitely. Because against a certain player, a soft block might work. Against another player, you might want to be playing the ball faster. And against a third player, just a little bit of a counter spin can help. So I want you to be able to practice all of those three variations and any other variations that you can with your blocking, same as you would with any other skill in table tennis.
Welcome to the Train Smarter section of the show. And today we've got 3 tips for you. Now, Alice, when we're training, often what happens is I'll pick a drill and I'll work on something like my forehand topspin. Then my opponent will pick a drill and they'll work on something. And generally when they're working on something, if they're working on their topspin, I'm blocking.
Yes.
So the first tip is about that.
The first tip is about utilizing the other half of your training most of the time. So when it's your partner's turn to do the drill, what I want you to do is make sure you're being active with your block. So often they're hitting the ball to one position, and so often I see players, when it's their turn to block, they're just doing this and just putting the ball in the right position.
You look very bored there, Alois.
I am. That just actually bored me. So I want you to be active with your legs, with your mind, and with your whole body as well. So just after each shot, just move, just move, just move. Even if the ball's going to the same spot all the time, I want you to just move, be active, be active.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be a big movement, does it? Even just a small bit can be active. And I guess also another thing you can do here is practice your tracking of the ball. How closely can you watch the ball, like you mentioned earlier? Can you see the ball spinning? Can you see the logo on the ball?
Yeah. So watching the ball carefully. And then the other bit of this is your accuracy. So even if they want the ball going there and there, make sure you're putting the ball exactly there and exactly there to where you want or where they want you to put the ball. And so now you're getting that accuracy and also you're being active.
Great. Yeah. And now our second tip here for training smarter, Alois, will actually help both you and your partner.
Yes. So what I want you to do here is I want you to be brave and get them to, or ask them to not just put the ball here, to perhaps just spread where they're hitting the ball to for their drill. Now, there's a couple of things here. You might think that, okay, so I'm going to become a little bit more inconsistent and I mightn't be as good for them with their drill, but trust me, it's going to be better for both of you in the long run. So Tip number 2, and you have to be brave for this one, ask them to be a little bit more spread with where they're hitting the ball to. Now, that's challenging you a little bit more. And it's, again, a little bit more like it's going to be in a match situation. You're never going to get the ball just coming there. They're never just going to be hitting the ball straight to you. They're going to be looking to play the ball to different positions. And what you could do is just set up a game situation in that drill. Say, okay, you're allowed to hit the ball anywhere in my backhand half, okay, but I'm going to go back to where you're doing the drill. Do a game. And then you'll see that they'll start to get a little bit craftier and start to move the ball around for you naturally.
Yeah, trying to beat you, yeah. But this is also great for them because in a game, they want to be going wider sometimes. So it really helps them with their placement as well.
Yes. And again, it gets them into that game mindset of not hitting the ball to someone, hitting the ball away from someone.
All right, excellent. All right. And now, tip number 3 here is
getting them to spread the ball all over the place for your drill. So
yeah, because Alice, we often think about when it's my turn to do a drill that I have to be working on some aggressive forehand topspin, but the block's an important shot, so I could spend my time saying I want to work on my block.
Yeah, I'm going to block the ball to your forehand. I want you to do forehand topspin or a little bit faster or whatever it is, and I'm going to block the ball from anywhere if you're up to that. Okay, or get them to put the ball into set positions to start with and then gradually increase to them hitting the ball to anywhere. So have blocking as your drill. As Jeff said, your drill doesn't always have to be about being aggressive.
Excellent. All right, so hopefully those 3 tips will help you to train smarter.
That hurts. That hurts in the cold.
Oh, that hurts. You wouldn't think so. Make sure to check out the PingSkills website. We've got heaps of step-by-step tutorials, expert tips, training plans. Plus, if you've got a table tennis question, you can ask it right there on the site, pingskills.com.